This is Trevor Ramos, author of How to Get Free Money for College and president of College Funding Remedies. Today I'm going to introduce to you a webcast that we recorded earlier today called How to Shop for Colleges That Best Suit Your Child's Interests, Talents, and Strengths so that they can graduate with a marketable degree and get free money for college. I'm introducing to you a special guest. Her name is Karen Grace Baker, and I call her the Connoisseur of Colleges. And once you watch the webcast, you'll understand why I call her that. She's also the president of Right College Choice, which is a company that she's built to help you and your child understand how to shop for the right colleges that are an appropriate fit for you and your child. It's an appropriate fit for your child academically and socially and geographically, as well as an appropriate fit for you financially. So with our information together, we're going to help you to find the right college that fits all of those avenues and attributes. And without further ado, I'm just going to introduce you to the piece.
Okay, welcome, folks. So today, hopefully you can see the screen. Just chat to make sure you can see the screen. Today, we're going to talk about how to shop for colleges that best suit your child's interests, talents, strengths, so they can graduate with a marketable degree and get free money for college. And what that means is, of all the choices that you have in terms of where you can send your kids to college, it's very important that we understand how to appropriately shop for colleges that offer a benefit and provide what everyone in the family is looking for, whether it's making sure that it's a social fit for the child, that it's a financial fit for the family, and that is an academic fit as well. So much at stake with that. And, maybe we've heard of stories and all that kind of stuff. So my name is Trevor Ramos. I'm the author of How to Get Free Money for College. I'm bringing in a special guest by the name of Karen Grace Baker, who I would say is one of the most knowledgeable people when it comes to finding the right college for their child, for a parent's child. And I want to lay out for you what the context of this discussion is and why it's important that we really pay attention to this conversation. Number one is there are more people applying to college than ever before. Okay, we're going through obviously the baby boom generation. It's a very large population of adults who many of them are sending their kids to college, which has resulted in a huge spike in applications to college as well as enrollments. Because of the internet, it's now a lot easier for you to apply to many colleges. It used to be that pretty much all you needed was good grades, and you would apply to one or two colleges down the street or in your state, or that that everyone talked about, and that's it, you were in. Now with the internet, people are applying to 10 to 15 to 20 colleges, and to apply to a UC, they all require the same application, so you can pretty much apply to all of them at the same time. Not to mention that because of the internet, you can apply to college all the way from Europe. You can apply to American college from India. You can apply to American college from Korea and China. And these students have dreams of wanting to go to schools like Harvard, Stanford, Yale, UCLA, just like your children do. That makes the competition a lot more stiff because it's very easy to turn in an application. So not only that, but when you are trying to select the right college for your child, it's very tempting to just want to chase after a brand name, right? For me, in my personal experience, I told you I got a lot of money to go to Boston University, and really what I was trying to do is to get into the best college that I could possibly get into. And I didn't do it on purpose, but I ended up getting a lot of money to go there as well. But one of the things that I didn't really think about was whether that school was going to be a fit for me socially, whether there were going to be people like me that I could relate to and that were going to make it easier for me to make friends, for me to really feel like I belong there. Now, I stuck it out. I worked, 15 to 45 hours a week to be able to afford that opportunity, which did not give me a lot of time to socialize. And, I can look back in those days and say, yeah, it was a day where the days where I was in an environment that, I was just a guy that was born in, Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, and raised at Van Nuys, and now going to an expensive private school where really, really well-off parents send their kids to, and I was getting a scholarship, and that's something that I had not even thought about. Now, I got what I needed out of it, but in retrospect, maybe a school like SUNY Binghamton in New York, UCLA, University of Texas would have been a more appropriate fit for me personally. And as a parent, obviously you don't want to put your child in a situation where you're having to call them, every week and they're having a terrible time at their school, right? You want them to enjoy their experience. You want to put them through something that's going to be able to help them to build confidence and allow them to ease through the world, and not to put them in a situation where they're going through intense culture shock, right? Not to mention the fact that if they do switch their college and they go to another college, obviously it's unlikely that the credits are going to transfer from that college to the next college. So if you send the child to whatever, Colorado School of the Mines, and they don't like it there, and now they want to go to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, we now have to be concerned about whether or not the credits are going to transfer from one college to another. It's not just that, too. It's also the resort sale that these colleges are doing. When I talk to parents that, attend colleges, or when we go to college fairs and they ask colleges, about their school. If everyone can just mute your speakers, please. Please mute your speakers. We ask them about their school. Yeah, please mute the speakers. We ask them about the school, and the reason why the child is into the school, if it's not the brand name, then it's because of, it was a really nice campus, and, I felt like there were a lot of things for me to do there, and it seemed like it was going to be a cool experience. And, these colleges, one of the reasons why they're getting so expensive is because they're investing a lot of money in things like atriums and high-end buildings and luxury student apartment, and putting Starbucks in every building, and all these kinds of things to get people to say yes, which is why are they doing that? Because there are over 3,000 colleges that you could attend, and to stand out in that competitive of a market, you have to come up with cool things to get people to say yes to your college. But it's now getting to the point where people are picking colleges not even for the passionate professors and to be in the classroom with students that are passionate about the topic as they are. They're starting to pick colleges because it offers a lazy river, or because it offers a rock wall, things like that. Guys, please mute your speakers. Please mute your speakers. Thanks. So, parents are, I see this all the time. Parents are being seduced to get into, hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loan debt because their kid has fallen in love with a college for the wrong reasons. And by the time, the child has gotten in, it's just they're so happy to get in that they're now just going to take out plus loans to do that. So picking the college for a child that's going to be an academic fit, not one where they're going to be the last person in the class trying to keep up with all the rest of the students, but they're also not going to be bored and almost made fun of for being the smartest kid in the class. That's going to be a social fit for them. That's going to provide the resources that are suitable for what they are looking for, that is going to be appropriate for what they want to major in, and has the money to give you so that you're not having to take out student loans, mortgage, take money that you need for your own financial well-being to pay for it for all of your kids to go to college. That's risky business. So it's like going through a needle in the haystack to make sure that you find a school that fits all of those appropriate figures. And it's not just picking a brand name like UCLA. It is great. It is fantastic. And we're going to talk about the advantages of going to highly prestigious universities and how to make that the result that you're going to get out of this. But it is a process that you take your student through in order to make sure that it provides the best of all worlds for the family. And that's what ensures that the child graduates from that college, finishes, and when they do finish, that the parent is still in a good financial position to be able to retire or to be able to help to send that child to graduate school and to help to launch that child's career. So what I've brought to you is one of my most prized resources. You know, Karen is, I call her the connoisseur of colleges. It's just, when you hear her talk about colleges and, you know, all these different nuances of what these colleges can offer and how to help a student stand out amongst thousands of applications and the techniques that she used, it's really phenomenal. And I think you'll benefit from just hearing her talk and, you know, understanding her approach to this. And then we're going to provide you an opportunity to chat with her so that you can, you know, understand how to tailor the amazing information that she's going to share with you to your particular family, your particular student. So, Karen, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Trevor. How are you this morning?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good. You hear me okay?
Yeah, I'm going to give the screen to you. And, you know, I'm as excited as everybody else is. And I'm going to put my stuff out I'm going to start taking some notes. So let me know if you got the invite to the screen, Karen.
So show my screen. Is that it? You got it?
Yep. All right. So you're good to go.
Good morning, everyone. How are you doing? I don't know if people are here from the East Coast, West Coast, or across the country, but I'm here in sunny California, and I'm excited to be here with Trevor, who I would say is probably the president of my yet uncreated fan club. I have as much admiration for Trevor as he does for me. But more importantly, the reason that Trevor and I connected was because I found out about what he was talking to parents about in terms of how to finance a college education. And we've worked on a couple of things together. But what Trevor calls me a connoisseur of colleges, and I appreciate that. But part of the reason that I have that title with him is because anytime we talk, he never is at a loss for words in terms of the information I have to share with him. And part of that is because I absolutely love what I do. Drives my husband and kids crazy sometimes. They have to shut me off because I live and breathe colleges. No matter where I go, what I do, if I'm on vacation, sometimes I sneak away from my family and I'll go and look at a college. That's just me. It's something that since I've been doing this for the past 15 years, I really enjoy. Hopefully I'll be able to impart some of that to you guys as well. So what to do is probably, I think the thing most important on people's minds right now is why is it so difficult in college day versus when I attended? The reason I start off like that is because many of us went to college 20, 30, maybe even 40 years ago, depending on, who's on the phone right now. And what happened is that the college had changed. But there's a lot of different factors that have contributed to that. And Trevor touched on some of them, and I'll review a little bit of them, but I want to be productive for our main to something other. The baby boom. Absolutely. What's happened is that lots of baby boomers who themselves went to college or maybe didn't go to college have college-age kids enter the marketplace right now. And over the past 2 years, that started to taper down. I mean, the height of that market was probably when my oldest daughter was graduating from college, most competitive time to apply for college, which was the high school graduating class of 2009. 2009, 2010, that was when there was a glut of students that were entering college at that time. So I guess a lot of baby boomers were busy somewhere around the years of 1990 to 1990, these kids who are now college age and entering colleges. But that created a lot of students entering the marketplace with, quite honestly, the same amount of college slots that were available when you and I graduated from college. So just look at it in terms of my former background before I did this was marketing, supply and demand. So lots of kids enter the marketplace, but very few of the colleges have increased the amount of students that they're accepting into that freshman. The thing about change landscape is the Common App. When most of us on this call were applying to colleges, there was no such thing as a Common App. We had a paper application. We had to complete that application with a typewriter, or maybe an electric typewriter. We basically input all the information. We got our recommendations. We submitted our test scores, and we applied to colleges. Most people I talked to that graduated 20 plus years ago all say that they didn't apply to more than 4 colleges. Some people applied to 1 college. And usually it was a college that was in a local marketplace with a local state college. They applied and there was minimal or no stress in terms of whether they were going to be accepted or not. They applied, if they got accepted, they went. If they didn't, then they just went to a local community college or took another pathway. There wasn't all of the stress and anxiety that revolves around people having these major discussions about where you're applying, what schools you're applying to. The other thing that has done, Trevor alluded to, is that it's made it easy to apply to colleges. Students can apply to more colleges and include more applications in their process. And if we all know teenagers, we know that the thing that teenagers are always trying to do is find the path of least resistance. So if they're applying to 3 or 4 colleges on a Common App list, and all of a sudden they see that if they just push one more button and all they have to do is put a check mark, and there are no additional essays for another college, other than the fact that, of course, us as parents have to pay the application fee, they're more than likely to start adding colleges to their list. It's almost like a video game. It doesn't feel real. Well, I don't think I'm qualified to apply to Harvard, but what the heck? I'm just going to check off this box because it's only another $75 to my parents, and I might get lucky and I might get in. And I think what happens with the Common App and the ease of applying to colleges is students have lost sight, and parents and clerks have lost sight of what it takes and how colleges review applications, and they have started to look at it as a lottery system. I tell students all the time, don't apply to a college because your attitude is, well, someone has to get in. You're absolutely right. Someone has to get in, but they have to have the right qualifications for applicants. They're not just going to pick someone because, oh my God, I have 1,500 slots and I've only filled 1,499 of them. This student has a 2.5 and the average SAT score. I need another warm body. Let me just admit this student. That's very rarely going to happen at a college. So, the Common App makes it easier and there's more applications. The other thing that I want to talk a little bit about is as your students start to apply to colleges, there's something we call in the college admissions world called the FAST app. And what that is it's a marketing and enrollment tool that a lot of colleges use. And what that tool is your student will, the moment they sign up for the SAT and they check off the box that they're interested in the student search service, which means they're interested in getting information from a college. It's either during the SAT and sometimes also during the PSAT service. They will start to get in their email box, they'll start getting solicitations from colleges. Hey, Susie, you look like you'd be a great match for St. John's University. Here's what we want to do. We would like you to apply to our school, and we're going to make it easy for you. And what they do is it's pure marketing. What they do is they think about what would be the factors that they would need to make it easy for that student to apply to their college. So what they'll do is they touch on the student. What are the student's motivations? Oh, the students hate to do essays and they don't want to do any more essays. So we'll say to your student, you can apply to our college and you don't have to write any essays. You just complete this application. It's almost like if you're applying for a credit card, let's say, where they say we can 10 minutes. All we need is your social security number, your street address. Give us the reference, and you're done. It's a similar process. So they'll tell the student no essays needed. Just give this basic information. Now the next step becomes, okay, that's great for the student, but does that parent want to pay an extra $50 or $90 for an application? Well, now they start to appeal to the parent and just say, oh, and by the way, no application fee. So now you've hit the student with no essay. Love that. You've hit the parent with no additional money to pay for this application. You've hit that, and all of a sudden your student has applied to a college that you have no idea that they applied to. Because a lot of times when students have those two things covered, those bases covered, no application, don't even ask mom or dad for that. I don't have to write an essay. I just fill out these boxes. This college obviously wants me because they sent me a solicitation, so I'm just going to apply to this college. And sometimes the student might get accepted to that college depending on the level of selectivity, but other times they won't. I have students that come to me all the time very upset. I can't believe it. They contacted me. They told me that they were interested in me. I didn't have to pay anything. I didn't have to do an essay. And then they denied me. They rejected me. So we go through the whole process of why do those colleges have those FAST Acts? Just in a nutshell, the reason they have them is because they're trying to increase the amount of applications that they receive. Why are they trying to do that? Because if it doesn't cost anything and it's not a profit center for them, the application fee, what they're doing is they're making their college look more selective. For example, when you look at what percentage of students get accepted to a college, the equation is the numerator is the amount of students that they accept, and the denominator is the amount of applications that they receive. So if that bottom number, if the denominator is, if you've got 100,000 students who are applying to your college and you only accept 10,000 of them, that makes your acceptance rate 10%. So what you're always trying to do if you're a college that's somewhere in the middle or in the lower echelon of acceptances, you want for those parents and kids that are going to look at a college of selectivity to see what percent of students are accepted, you're saying, oh, this is a pretty good college. Only 20% of students get into that college. Be very careful because that could have been driven by a lot of the FAST Acts. They give away a lot of free applications. Students apply. They deny those students, and then they can make their numbers go up. So one, that's another factor in terms of the amount of applications and those acceptance rates that you're starting to see. The other piece that Trevor talked about was the international population. Tons of students in the international marketplace that are trying to get into our colleges. The prestige of all of our highly selective colleges, those students are trying to come to colleges here. Quite honestly, in a lot of the Asian markets, it's really difficult to get into college, so it's easier for even the highest performing students to get into colleges here in the U.S. The other piece is that colleges are accepting international students because they're trying to fill as they start to make the campus look more beautiful, as Trevor talked about, they need money to finance that operation. And that money comes from the highest paying students, which are usually international students. They can command a higher price tag for those students to come to the colleges here in the U.S. They can help to finance some of those fancy things that our kids are getting excited about at these college campuses by accepting those international students. The other piece we need to talk about is test prep and tutoring. When we were growing up, I think there wasn't a lot of emphasis on test prep. I remember taking the SAT, and I know that I went to SAT cold. I don't even think it was that big a deal. I grew up on the East Coast. I remember knowing what the dates were. I took the test and showed up for exam that day, maybe looked at a test prep book for a minute or a sample and did that. The other piece is a lot of these kids are prepping, and parents are doing this stuff well in advance, starting in 7th or 8th grade to start the kids doing test prep. So test scores are going up, and that's starting to get parents anxious because as they look at the test scores for a lot of these colleges, they're saying, oh my God, how do I get my kid to that test score? I've got to start seeing the coffers of the test prep companies. Likewise, a lot of students, not every, but a lot of students at both public and private high schools are now using the service of tutors. So what's happening is that a lot of students are, in a way, I think, becoming a little too dependent on tutors. So they have most of the classes for them to get the A's in those classes. They could conceivably very easily get a B, but they're trying to meet the needs and the selectivity of a lot of colleges. So they're trying to get straight A's. And the way they can do that is, in addition to what they're learning in class from the teacher, they come home every day and they've got someone that is meeting with them once or twice a week and getting the kids up to speed or ahead of their classmates in terms of tutoring. So all this college frenzy is being fed by a lot of outside parties that have a vested interest in making us stressful and anxious about the process. Test prep companies are telling you if you don't do test prep, your kid's not going to get into a college. If you don't do tutoring, your kid's not going to get the straight A's and not going to be able to get admitted to a college. So I just kind of like to have people take a look, step back a minute and look at what's feeding the marketplace and then start to think about you can participate in that if you want, but I think a lot of what happens is it just drives up the anxiety and the stress for a lot of people, and they start looking at the numbers and start freaking out that the kid is not going to get into college. The other thing I think that's happening in terms of why the difficulty getting to college today is what I call education creep. And that's not the guy that's stalking you. Education creep is what I call it. That's a notion that what's happening is a college degree today has to be the norm, and it's the price of entry into the marketplace, just like a high school diploma used to be many years ago. So for most, for those people who may have been able to graduate from high school, get a really good job, work at a company for 20, 25 years, and not have to get a college degree, if something happens in the marketplace and they lose their job, they're now seeing how valuable that college degree is. So a lot of those people, adults, are now going back to school because now, out of necessity for them to maintain their jobs or to be able to get the same job that they had previously in the marketplace, they have to have their degree. The other thing that's happening, I think, is that a lot of the jobs that only require a high school diploma are now gone. They're being replaced by technology. So a lot of the entry-level jobs, the person could be a secretary or an administrative assistant. Everyone else nowadays is an administrative to type up a document for you. You need to answer your phone. Technology does that for you. So a lot of those entry-level jobs that used to be available for students with a high school diploma are now gone. Interestingly, what happens though is a lot of those jobs or jobs where you're doing some of that clerical work is still being filled by recent college graduates. So it's a matter of also our kids, when they get these degrees, understanding that they still have to pay the dues, and they're not going to be the Michael Zuckerberg that starts his own company as soon as you either leave Harvard or get out of the marketplace and have a degree. So those are just some background information on why is it difficult getting into college. That's the market factors that are there, and just so you get sort of a view of the landscape of what's going on. So then you go back to, but is it really more difficult? Well, here's some statistics. In summary, the REACH schools, which are the schools that are supposed to be the schools that, your SAT scores, ACT scores, and your GPA are supposed to be, your statistics a little bit lower than what they were before. You would just say that's a REACH school, but you still had a pretty good shot of getting in. Those are now called those schools long shot schools. And the schools that are safeties, which meant that your SAT, ACT scores, and your GPA completely match those, you could pretty much guarantee you're going to get into those. Those are considered matches, and in some instances you could get in, in other instances you couldn't. Just for frame of reference, these are some of the more highly selective schools that you can look at what the acceptance rates were back in 1997, 2009, 2011, and now 2016. For those of us here in Southern California, if you look at a school like USC in 1997, 70% acceptance rate, which means that you've had a pretty good chance of getting into that school. But 12 years later, in 2009, it was 24%. Same thing in 2011, and then in the last 5 years, USC has now gotten super competitive, and they're only accepting about 16.5% of the students that apply there. Likewise, a school like University of Chicago in 97 was 71% acceptance. Today, less than 8%. A school like Yale was always still competitive. The only company were competitive back in the late 90s, percent, but that's a decent amount. That meant that you had to be one of the top students. Well, today it's nearly impossible, based on if you just look at the numbers, for a student to be able to get accepted to those schools. I mean, any school that I would tell students, if a school is 6% acceptance rate, that means it's 94% chance that you won't get in. So should we worry?
Karen, let me just, my mind is being blown by this right now. So let me get this straight. In 1997, if 100 people applied to USC, 70 of them would have gotten in. And now, last year, if the same 100 students applied, 16 and a half, 16% of them would actually get in.
That's right.
That's happened over the course of 9 years. 9 years. No, that's 20. That's 19 years. Okay.
Right. Exactly. So all those factors I talked about contribute to that. But the other thing, Trevor, is also understand is that what's also driving that lower number is that in the admissions frenzy, yes, the students that probably applied back in 1997 were probably pretty qualified, and they knew that they had a pretty good chance of getting in. Let's put that factor in there. Today, of that 16%, there are probably at least 20 to 30% of students that are probably applying to USC that probably don't even have the admission criteria to be admitted, but because they view the system as a lottery system, they're saying, because they don't, when they look at who gets accepted and who doesn't get accepted, they don't see a specific magical formula in their mind of what you need to get into that school. And so what they're doing is they're applying blindly because they're saying, what the heck, it's a lottery, I'm going to throw my name into the hat and I might get picked, which is not necessarily true, but that's how students and parents are viewing the process. And the reason that happens is because they see students who have really high SAT, ACT scores and super high GPAs. Just look at those two factors, and they're saying, I can't believe that Susie, who has a 4.2 and had a 2200 SAT out of a possible 2400, that's the old SAT now, that she didn't get accepted. And they're looking at those two factors and saying, but I saw that Johnny, who has a 3.8 and has a 1900 SAT, he got accepted. Why did he get in and she didn't get in? There's no rhyme or reason for that. And what I want to talk about today is there is a rhyme or reason for them perhaps accepting a student that has a lower GPA or a lower SAT or ACT score, because GPA and test scores are not the only factors that colleges look at when they admit students. So yes, it's more competitive than it was. That's definitely a factor. But the other thing is the way that colleges are looking at students, especially since they have now the luxury of being able to have hundreds of thousands of students applying to their schools, and all these students on paper all look equally qualified based on their test scores because of the everyone's doing test prep, and the GPA because everyone's got tutors, and everyone is all these high schools are popping up that may or may not, an A at one high school may not truly be an A, it might be an inflated grade. I don't know if I even want to get into parents that go crazy if the kid doesn't get an A. If that's the same attitude that's happened over the past 20 years, where every kid gets a trophy. When I played sports when I was younger, you only got a trophy if you won. But now you've got 4 teams in the league, and every kid in the league, whether they first place or fourth place, gets a trophy because people don't want their kids to lose. They don't want their kids' self-esteem to go down. Everyone has to win something. So I think there's when you take all those things under consideration, all of a sudden a lot of students start to look the same. The other thing is I think it's important is that when you look at these numbers is that when kids and parents see what they consider random factors to students getting selected to colleges, they get the signal that name is the most important component. So they are looking at and they're saying, I want my kid to get into the best school, so I'm going to try for these schools that only have less than 10% of students accepted, because if my kid gets accepted to those schools, then my prospective employer is going to say, oh my God, this kid must really be smart because they got into this school and they had the ability to get through all of the noise that's in the marketplace. They must be a superstar if they got accepted to that school. And in some instances, that's the case, but a lot of times you have to think about why did that student get into college, and we can talk a little bit more about that. So the other thing I want to talk about is, is it really more difficult? Having seen those numbers, you ask yourself the question, yes, it's difficult, but I'm saying it's not as much as you think. Those numbers I showed you were for highly selective universities, which are the top 50 colleges out of the 3,000 that are in the U.S. News and World Report or any other ranking system that you'll see. Every single magazine is making money because all they have to do to get people to buy the magazine is to produce some type of ranking. Fortune does it, Forbes does it, U.S. News and World Report, Newsweek, any publication you could think of has now come out with a ranking of the colleges. what they fail to talk about, which of course is not what sells subscriptions, is that the average acceptance rate of all colleges across the U.S., I mean, every college, from college number 1 to college number 3,000, is 65%. So you look at that number, that sort of makes you step back and say, wow, it's not that difficult to get into college. It's difficult to get into the most selective colleges. And so I think it's important to step back and look at that and say, do I want my student to go to college and a college that's going to be a good fit for them versus do I want to play the numbers game and just focus on the top, 20 or 30 colleges? I think it's really important that what happens is what I call it's either the cocktail party chatter or the let's get together for breakfast or brunch after church chatter, where the subject comes up. What is how old is Susie? Oh, she's 17 years old. Is she applying to college? What college is she applying to? And I think what happens is, and I can speak from both a professional and personal standpoint, we start to place our worth as parents on the type of colleges that our kids are getting accepted to. So when the subject comes up, it's very easy to say, we don't really know, but we're applying to UCLA, UC Berkeley, Stanford, Princeton, Harvard, Yale, because by throwing out those college names, it gives the impression, whether true or not, that your kid must really be bright, they must really be smart, because if they're applying to those colleges, they clearly must have the qualifications to be admitted to those colleges. And it also shows that whatever you have done as a parent in terms of whether your kid is in a private school, in a public school, and whatever things that you have done to get your kid to a point where they have the ability to apply to those colleges means that you're a good parent. I think that what that's starting to do now, it's tying the worth of a student on the perceived prestige of their college. And I really want to have us start focusing on what is going to be the best fit for that student, both academically, socially, for parents also financially, because I think that what happens is I'm a parent, so I can say this, that our students and our children pick up cues from us and our conversations. And I think what happens is when they hear us say, mentioning these schools, that perhaps our student knows that they may not be qualified to apply to that college, but we encourage them to do that. Our kids are afraid to disappoint us more than they're afraid to disappoint themselves. I've had many students I've worked with who have said to parents, I have one student that said they were interested in applying to Emerson, Syracuse, she was interested in communications, Emerson, Syracuse, Northwestern, UC Santa Barbara, and I think maybe UC Berkeley. Those were the 4 or 5 colleges interested in, and I looked at the communications program and was very happy with those. Had about a 3.6 GPA, above average, and probably 80th percentile SAT score, somewhere in the 1900 range. And all those schools it was a good balance of schools. A couple of them were reaches, but some of them were definitely schools that she would get accepted to. By the time we finished the college list, when the parents intervened, they added Brown, they added Princeton, they added NYU. They started adding colleges and saying things to her like, well, why don't we apply to these schools? Because who knows? You could get in. You should aim higher. You should reach higher. And she very clearly in the beginning stages said, you know what? I really like Syracuse. That's my #1 school. I really like Emerson. They have the communications program I want. They've got all the internships. I've researched the school. This is really the school for me. I've visited there. I love it. That's where I want to go. But as they started talking with their friends, they wanted to add Stanford to this. They started adding other schools that, for this particular student, really was not the right match because she was very career-oriented and she specifically wanted to go into journalism. And when she looked at, because I met the needs of the parent, because we were applying to Princeton, it took us hours of trying to figure out how she was going to answer the question, why do I want to go to Princeton? because in her mind, they didn't have a specific journalism program, and she couldn't find the majors that she was interested in. We also added Brown to the list. She went through and started looking at all these colleges, and it was very difficult for her to answer the question affirmatively and in an intelligent way why she was interested in that college, because at the end of the day, she really wasn't interested, and they didn't have the specific, more career-oriented program and major that she was looking for. So, fast forward to acceptances. She got into Syracuse. She got into Emerson. She didn't get into Santa Barbara. She didn't get into Berkeley, got waitlisted at, didn't get into Princeton, didn't get into Brown, applied to UPenn early, got denied early at UPenn. She ended up with a list of getting accepted to the colleges, quite honestly, that she should have. Penn State she got into. She ended up getting into colleges that she probably should have applied to in the first place, but then she had to deal with psychologically all the disappointment that she could feel her parents were experiencing by her not getting into prestigious colleges, her feelings of getting rejection from those prestigious colleges, which in her mind she knew that she was not qualified to apply for, nor was she interested in them. So if she had just gone with her gut, which is for her to find the schools that she thought were a fit for her on a lot of different levels, she had a better list than her parents did. So I just use that as a caution to tell parents and counselors as well, to be careful of the signals and the cues that you're sending to kids when you have them apply to colleges that they're not necessarily interested in, that don't have the majors or career interests that they're interested in, because those students are the ones that have to experience the denial and the rejection and have to process that. We as adults can say things like, oh, it doesn't matter, you'll go on in life, or some of the smartest people and most successful people didn't go to the top colleges. We can say that because we have life experience, but for a very fragile 17 to 18-year-old ego, that can do something that makes them go into the college of choice feeling that, they weren't quite as good. So just a caution in terms of why I focus so much on fit. So now that we've sort of gone through all the statistics, let's look at, oh my gosh, now I know that colleges are difficult to get into, but there are lots of colleges out there. What do I need to do? How can I help my student get into a college? Take a deep breath. There are, as I mentioned, there are 3,400 colleges across the U.S. And the other thing is, where you go to college does not determine your fate in the job market. College right now is a barometer for prospective employers to see if you have the discipline to take something to completion. Statistic, only 50% of the kids who start out going to college take it to completion. For example, the Department of Education did a study of the students who started a four-year college in 2009. 6 years later, which most of the graduation rates that you'll see quoted in a lot of the data will give you a 6-year graduation rate, not even a 4-year graduation rate. The students who started in 2009, when they went back and looked at the data, the National Student Clearinghouse looked at that, how many students that started in 2009 actually graduated 6 years later in 2015. Only 52% of students who started college had graduated in 6 years. So Trevor can give you more stats on the cost of taking more than 4 years to complete college. But if you're saying that only 50% of the kids that started college 6 years later had completed it, that's a lot of kids who started college and never made it to the finish line. So
Karen, why do you think that is, by the way? Why is it not 100%?
Because I think what happens is there's a lot of different reasons that kids go to college, the reasons kids start college. Here's one thing. One, if you don't find the right fit in the beginning, then I think that kids get to the college and they're muddling around. Oh, should I pick the right college? If they find themselves not fitting in socially, and this college that they went to has this fantastic rock climbing wall and goes on all these study abroad trips and all these great clubs, and that's what the reason they went to that college is because they envisioned this great social life. The students that are there at that college may not be the type of students that particular student feels comfortable with. we live in a very diverse world, a very diverse, country, state, whatever. And a lot of times, kids feel very comfortable within their high school setting because a lot of the students that are there are very similar to them. When you get out into the college world, you have a lot of different types of kids. I mean, even my own daughter, who youngest one that went to Yale, she got there and realized that even though she went to a private high school, there were lots of kids. Going to a private school on the West Coast is very different than going to a private high school on the East Coast. A lot more elitist on the East Coast. A lot of the kids had a common and shared experience of having gone to Andover or Exeter or any of those other, prep schools. And East Coast is very different than, I grew up on the East Coast. I knew what it was like, but it's very different for her. And so a lot of times, sometimes students aren't strong enough that they can't handle that navigate through that difference in social life or difference in type of students they're dealing with. I think the other thing that happens, which we as parents are very guilty of, is we say to our kids, you go to, we have them apply these prestigious colleges or colleges that may be more expensive than we can afford. And once they get accepted, now that we've said the word, they've been accepted to XYZ college, we feel an obligation for them to attend that college, even though we haven't looked beyond year one to see if we can afford to go to that college. Lots of kids start off at a college and then they end up transferring to another college, or their parents say, we're paying for year one and year two. We've taken on all these plus loans. We looked up and we've already engaged ourselves in $120,000 worth of debt. I can't see that for the next 2 years, or Dad and I are going to be 90 years old before we can retire. And so the kid will step out of college. They may still be in college, maybe they're part-time, not full-time. Or they may be going to a local community college because the parents are saying, you have to accumulate some more credits and then we'll let you go back to college. A kid may be at a school where at their public high school or their private high school, they were at the top of their class, and they get to a college and realize that all of a sudden they're not as smart as they thought they were, or they feel inept because maybe they're not getting straight A's. I mean, some of these students that had straight A's in high school freak out when they get to college, and if they get a B in a class, they fall apart. We haven't given a lot of our kids the resilience and the grit and the fortitude to say, guess what? Your freshman year, I tell both my daughters, they did well, and I tell a lot of my students, your freshman year is not going to make or break you in terms of your grades. You might get a C, you might even fail a class or two. What you want to do is your freshman year is going to be an adjustment. And so for some kids, if they don't do well their freshman year, I'm a parent. You just say, look, you wasted my money, you failed 2 classes, you're coming back home. You're not going back until you can prove to me that you're serious and you're adult enough to be able to be away at college. We bring them back home. We say you're going to get a job for a year or two, so they get taken off the statistical data for a student that starts at college and completed. Because as far as the college is concerned, they've withdrawn. They didn't complete the college. So it's a lot of different reasons, some financial, some social, but the thing to remember is that you want your kid to be able to start college and to complete it. And we're talking about graduation rate in 6 years. The other thing that happens sometimes, I think, at the state colleges is it takes a lot longer. Sometimes if it's a really, really big school, it might be less expensive to send your kid to that school, but sometimes it might take them 6 to 8 years to complete it because they don't have, for their major, their classes that they need to complete graduation are not available every single semester. So depending on how they sequence the courses, they may need 1 or 2 courses to complete their major, and those courses may not be available in year 4 or 5 or even year 6. So there's a lot of different factors, but I just kind of put that stat out there to help parents understand that fit is really important and that we want to make sure that we get those students in the college where they're going to be happy on a lot of different levels so that they can ultimately complete college. The other thing in terms of, where you go to college does it determine your fate in the job market. A lot of parents want to send their kids to the quote-unquote brand name or more prestigious colleges because it's their thought that their kids are going to get the connections that they want. I would say 20 or 30 years ago that was important. With social media, we can love it or hate it. Social media actually allows our kids to, get lots of different ways to get connections for those jobs. LinkedIn is a great tool. A lot of times those students, if they get an internship at a particular company, that's their in at the job. Companies don't necessarily only recruit at some companies will recruit at a specific college campus for their prospective interns and employees, but a lot of times if a student is aggressive and assertive enough, they can get an internship at a company, even if that company does not actively come to the campus to recruit. Or they know our kids are connected with each other. They may have someone on Facebook that they're connected to, that they find out, or Instagram that they find out that student is doing an internship or applying for an internship at Google. Since our kids put all their business on the internet anyway, and they say, hey, how did you apply for the internship at Google? Do you know someone there? And all of a sudden, if you're at Google and you refer someone, that's extra point for that employer knowing that there's someone that they know that they're referring for that job. And so there's lots of different ways to get connected, and it doesn't necessarily mean that if you're going to Harvard or Stanford or Yale that your connections may be better at some level, and some level they may not, because you're competing with all those other students who are all very high achieving. They're all trying to get to the same company, so the same internship. If you are the top student at a very good state school or a smaller liberal arts college, that particular employer may not get a lot of applications from that college, and they look at your student's profile and say, hey, this is a really smart student. Let me try a student from Occidental College that I've never had a student at Occidental College at Google. Let me see if this student has a good background. Let me bring them in as an intern. So there's lots of different ways, and it's not just the connections. I also find sometimes if a kid is at a college where socially it's not a good connection for them, they may be a student that's at let's say they're at a Columbia University in New York and a transplanted LA student, so they're having a hard time adjusting to the hustle and bustle of New York City. Those students may not connect with some of their classmates who may have connections, and they're going to stick with the kids that are from California. So if they're trying to get connections in New York, even though they're at a college in New York, they haven't made those kinds of connections that they need to, because they're kind of sticking with their own. They stick with all the kids from California who are all going back to California for the summer. So there's lots of different things that can happen, and selecting a particular college because you think that you're going to be going to school with the Kennedys or LL Cool J's daughter or whoever the latest rap or celebrity is going to give you connections. That's not necessarily true.
Yeah, Karen. Actually, I just want to clear up a little bit of the narrative. So Karen's talked about her daughters doing well. I just want to give you the context. So Karen has one daughter that graduated. She's at Yale right now, and then there's one that just graduated from Stanford and just got accepted to Wharton School of Business. That's the MBA program at UPenn. Her husband went to MIT and Harvard, and Karen went to Boston College. We're not saying that prestigious colleges are not, great opportunities for students. It has to be the right fit for that student, and they obviously have to make sure that, it's a matchup for everything involved, as far as academics, socially, and so forth. We did get a question, Karen, and the question is, what do you recommend for helping parents to find an appropriate list of colleges for their children?
That's a pretty broad question. I'd like to wait a little bit later to get into it when I start talking about how parents should be looking at building that list. I'd rather wait until we get a little bit later into the presentation so we can kind of talk a little bit more about that, and I'll kind of brief some of the stuff a little bit faster. But it's very simple to put together a list, but you can't. That would be just put together a list of colleges that you think are good for your student without having done the background work on who your student is. And I think that's just like going to the grocery store, going to the grocery store and saying, I need to buy some groceries, and having no idea what you want to do and just randomly walking to the store and just picking something off the shelf because it's General Mills cereal or it's XYZ laundry detergent. So I think it's a very dangerous precedent to put together a list without knowing a lot about researching the colleges and researching who your student is and where they might fit best. I can get a little bit into that as we get a little further along, and I'll move this along a little faster. But in that, the other thing I also want to say is that the other reason that you shouldn't focus as much on, whether your kid gets in a prestigious college. You want your kid to go to a college, but they're also going to do well, because our generation of kids are probably going to go to graduate school, and graduate schools care about grades, not colleges. I can tell you right now, my daughter that is going to a Wharton school for a graduate degree, she has lots of friends of hers. One friend of hers who's going to be at Wharton with her, one went to Michigan State, and the other one went to Penn State. So it doesn't matter where you went undergrad. What it matters is what you did when you went to the undergraduate school in terms of graduate school. The graduate schools don't care what your undergraduate degree was in. They want to see that you did well academically, and that if, same for college, if you scored really well on a GRE or GMAT, for example, for business school. So these are friends of hers who didn't go to quote-unquote prestigious undergraduate schools, but did exceptionally well, and they went to undergrad schools they went to, and they got into the same business school she got into. Wharton, Columbia, Duke, Northwestern, Kellogg. So those schools don't care where you went to undergrad, and the easiest way to do that is to go and look at all those graduate schools that are graduate school your students interested in, and look at the undergraduate schools where they accepted students from, and you'd be probably very surprised that there'll be a handful of prestigious or, schools that accept less than 20% of students, but there's a ton of schools undergraduate schools that those graduate schools accept students from that maybe once you may not have even heard of, or that aren't what you consider on your high selectivity radar. Okay, so let's get a little bit into what can I do to help my students get into college. What I'm proposing, my process is basically to reverse the process and reverse the question. So, for example, what you want to do is, rather than say, let me put together a list of colleges that would be good for my students, you can do that, but what you want to do is you want to make sure that you make a college want your student instead of your student wanting the college. Now, I sort of equate that to a relationship. What is it that is special and unique about your student, and focusing on your student? What is it that's special and unique? And assume that everyone else that's going to be in that pool of students that are applying to the college has high grades, they've taken AP classes, they have high test scores. And think about, why should a college be interested in your student? I'm going to give you a quote from Richard Shaw, who was the Dean of Admissions at Stanford. He said more than, and I've seen him talk several times, he says, every year I can admit 4 times the amount of students that I have slots for in my incoming class, with students who have GPAs of 4.0 plus and near perfect SAT or ACT scores. Once he's seen those students and he knows those are highly qualified students that have that basic admission criteria, the high SAT, ACT score, the high GPA, the next question he asks is, what else? And the what else is what I think is really important for parents and students to focus on. Assuming everyone else has all those grades and test scores, what else is it about that student that's going to make that student a compelling student that will be attracted to that college? Colleges admit students and not numbers. We like to think they're admitting numbers, but they will look at the numbers for that student, but they're looking for students. They're trying to create a student body of very interesting students. And so I tell parents, when you're going through this process, look at what makes your kid unique and special. This is the reason why you hear about top students not getting accepted into the top schools. I can't believe it. Tommy didn't get in. He was a valedictorian of the class. He had a 4.5. He had a perfect SAT score. He was the president of the debate club. Fantastic. But there are a ton of other kids that look exactly like that. And this is where I put my prior career before doing this was in marketing. How can you market your student special of your kid, your student, so that you can find out what makes them them, and figure out what it is that can make that student more attracted to a college? Like, how would you describe him or her to a college? And I tell parents a lot of times, and students do the same thing. And if you're a sophomore, junior in high school right now, this is the time to do it. Parents, think about anecdotes. There is something about your kid, your student, as a parent, that you remember from a very young age that still rings true today. For example, one of my daughters, anytime I go to the grocery store and they have the little plastic, bin next to the cash register, when your change comes out of the little chute, it says, can put your change here, give this to, some starving kid or whatever, some organization. The money would go through, I never get ready to grab my change, and my daughter would look at me and she would tell me, Mommy, put the change in there, help the kids. This is my social justice kid. She's always saving the world, helping people, but that's something I had to look at when she started to apply to college. Like, what would be a college that had some type of social consciousness and social responsibility? Because that was who she was, and that was what made her tick. So a lot of the colleges we looked at the clubs, the extracurricular activities, all the things that they had where she could be happy and engage as a student on that level, as well as academically and other kinds of things. So really look at who your student is and what it is that they're going to bring to the party that are going to be unique and special. Once again, we're focusing on the student. Look at things like, what kind of learner are they? Are they introspective? Is this a kid that's always wanting to answer questions, why? Are they an explorer? Are they an entrepreneur? Are they the kid that always, when you give them something, they take it apart and put it back together again? What kinds of classes do they thrive in? Have you had the opportunity to see that? If your students at a big public school and they think that they want to go to a bigger school when they go to college, you may want to test that out. Have them go to a summer program where they get to be in a setting where they're in very small classes and see what the reaction is when they come back. You may want to look at a lot of the different types of colleges. You want to find a college that loves you, just like a relationship. If there's a fit, the college will see it as well. I read all the time. If you want to look at any books, look at, colleges that change lives, colleges that create futures, colleges for B-part students. There are tons of resources out there, and I say look at those colleges, research them, have you look at them, go and visit if you can, or go online. You can do virtual, and is really going to be happy. Make looking for colleges fun instead of a chore. Make sure that you're looking at colleges that if your student's not a good test taker and they're more hands-on, you want to look at colleges that value that. So there are lots of right to date, there's 850 colleges that are test optional. And test option doesn't mean it's any less of a college. It just means that they understand that some kids don't do well on testing, and so they will basically ignore. You don't have to submit any test scores, but that means that they're going to put a magnifying glass on everything else in that college application. They'll look at extracurriculars. They'll look at their grades more carefully. They will scrutinize their recommendations, but they're really trying to get to know who that student is outside of putting them in a little box that says this is a student that has this particular test score. The other thing I said, what were their favorite experiences in school? Did they enjoy the project-based learning? They enjoyed working on projects. Did they have specific teachers they liked? What were those teachers like? Were they teachers that engaged them and got them to start thinking about who they were? Were there certain projects that they liked? It's really just a way for you to to figure out who your student is and how you can find the college that be the best fit for them. I say throw away the conventional way of looking at college admissions. Find colleges where your student like yours would stand out, which might mean that your students' SAT, ACT scores and their GPA are well above the average for that college. What happens is that could be a school, and Trevor knows this very well as well, where they might get a merit scholarship. You want to try to find out, think outside the box, figure out what kind of environment is going to best fit into. I always say the best ammunition as a parent is read. There's a great book, New York Times bestseller, Where You Go Is Not Who You'll Be by Frank Bruni. It basically lists all people. They do studies of all the people that we know that are very successful in life today that did not go to a college that you ever heard of. Joe Biden went to University of Delaware. Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett went to University of Nebraska, started up at University of very famous and successful people that did not go to name brand colleges. The other thing I'd also say is you're looking at colleges, make sure that you look at what colleges need. It's a supply and demand. If you think about it, a college like Stanford is known for engineering and computer science, but interestingly enough, there's so many kids applying for those kinds of majors that they're really pushing forward now, and they're really having an initiative to try to get kids who are interested in the humanities. Because the reality is that they have professors that are teaching, English and comparative race and ethnicity and sociology and different courses like that. Those professors need students, and so they're trying to find students that are going to help balance out their school. They don't want all those kids that are going to be little computer geeks to be on their campus. Now, my daughter went there, and one of the things that she came home one day, we had a discussion because she brought home some friends, and she was an economics major. One of her friends his major was comparative race and ethnicity. Another friend, her major was product design, and they were talking about the techies versus the fuzzies. I was like, what's that? Well, the Stanford students, they oriented, computer science oriented, and the students were the fuzzies, the ones in the humanities and the social sciences, which I thought was kind of interesting, but that also shows you that, the culture that's sometimes on that campus is they have to put people in little boxes, the techies versus the fuzzies. Now, they all got along, they all hung out together, but even then, even when you're on the campus, there's that notion that if it's a more math, science, hard science kind of camp, it's fuzzy, considered less intelligent or less accomplished. So, that's sort of a question you have to ask. If your kid is a fuzzy and they're on a campus that's a techie, how are they going to feel about that? They're going to feel like, oh, I'm getting straight A's because I'm taking all the sociology and psychology, but my friend is only getting B's in the quote-unquote hard classes like math. I have a different theory. I think oftentimes it's much more difficult to write than it is to find a solution to a math problem, but that's just me. But I think it's important to kind of look at that and look at what the needs are for that college and figure out whether your kid could be a star at that college because they're a phenomenal writer, and you might be able to get them into that particular college because they're fitting a need that college has. And I'm saying,
Karen,
research college. Yeah.
Yeah, and you talk about the Amazon approach to college where, let's say someone wants to attend Georgetown University. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, what I call it mine, and I hope no one, I don't get sued for this, but I just talk about an Amazon approach to college. So, for example, if a student is saying that they want to go to a particular college because they like a city, I want to go to University of Chicago. Why? I love Chicago. Well, there's tons of other colleges in Chicago. Let's find a school that is similar to that school. So we have to determine what the characteristics are. For example, here's an example. Lots of kids like Brown. Why do they like Brown? They love Brown because Brown has the open curriculum. You can take whatever courses you want. You can take them, pass, fail. Well, guess what? There are a ton of other colleges that are like that. So just like on Amazon where they say, if you liked XYZ book, we're recommending this book, or people who bought these books also bought these similar books. If you like Brown, you're probably going to like the University of Rochester. University of Rochester has a similar open curriculum, and there are a bunch of other schools that if you can do that. For example, if you like Georgetown, obviously you could do Boston College, but it's probably not a good example because they're almost the acceptance rates are getting pretty similar now. But if you like Georgetown because you want a school that's kind of in the middle of the city but has its own campus but has that Jesuit flavor to it, then maybe you can look at University of San Francisco. It's less competitive. It's got a lot of the same value systems in terms of being able to take the core curriculum. You might want to look at Santa Clara. So really look at with your student what they say is driving them to apply to that college, what those factors are, and you'll be able to find other colleges that have similar types of curriculum, or if they want to be in a particular city, there's other colleges in that city. Really get your kids to sit down and you work with them to figure out what it is that they're interested in so that you can hone in on what's really driving them to apply to that particular college. And I say research college is just like you research a job. For example, when you're applying to a job, if you're looking at a company, you're going to look at what kinds of employees are there, what kind of benefits they offer. That you meet seems to, just fit a certain profile. You're probably not going to, even if I give an offer, you're probably not going.
Hey, Karen, you're breaking up a little bit. Can you repeat what you said?
Okay. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you good.
Okay. So I was saying that what you should do is you should research a college that's similar to as an adult research a job. When you're looking at a company, you're trying to see whether they have, the type of job you're looking for, the type of work environment. I look at a college in the same way. So when your kid is looking at a college, when you go on a college tour, don't just do the tour that the college puts you on. A lot of parents do. They go to campus, they go to the information session, they go to they go on the campus tour with that tour guide, and then they leave. They form the impressions based on that. I tell students, hang around before or after. Even before you go on the tour, walk around the school, see what kinds of flyers are posted around the school. That should give you a good indication of what kinds of students attend that school. Look at different types of rallies, different activities, what are the community service things that students are doing. And I would go and I would definitely, and it's possible to sit in on a class. Sometimes at the highly selective schools, you have to make arrangements with a professor. You can contact admissions and say, I want to sit in on a class. But have your students sit in on a class, meet some students in their class, and when they're walking out, grab somebody and say, hey, you got a few minutes, and ask that student, where did they go to high school? Why did they select this colleges? What other colleges did they go to? And what is it they like or don't like about that school? Because I think those are really good experiences to have. And sometimes you might have to say, this was my dream school, but after I talked to 3 or 4 students at the school, they said some things to me that didn't make me feel comfortable, so I'm going to start looking at some other schools. And don't be afraid if you get accepted to a highly selective school to turn it down. People would probably think that my daughter was crazy, my youngest daughter, because she got into Harvard, and she turned down Harvard and went to Yale instead. Yes, degrees of selectivity, but her decision was based, because no one turns down Harvard, right? But her decision was really based on how she felt about when she went on that campus and talked to the students. And one of the questions she asked the students that were currently attending Harvard is, why did you pick Harvard over other schools? And unequivocally, what she heard was, because it's Harvard. And for her, that wasn't enough. The name wasn't enough to say, she wanted to hear because they had a small class size, or they had a relationship with their professors, or they liked the students, or their engagement with the professors was very different. She didn't hear that, and so she went with a school that she felt fit her best, which turned out to be a much wiser decision that she made than her parents would have made. So, really have your student research the colleges, and you can help them just like you would research a job. And then look at
Karen, actually, I want to get to, so one of the things that you're really known for is helping to package and, that's a weird word to use, but to package the student.
I hate that word.
Example. I know, right? Yeah, it's weird because it's a person, right? But, you talk about using things like portfolios. You talked about one of your daughters, she used dance, and some of your students that you've used some of their special talents that they thought were completely irrelevant in the application process, and that ended up being what was the difference maker in terms of getting in. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Okay, sure. Okay, so one of the things, I'll skip ahead a little bit in terms of, I think what's important is to showcase in the applications, or as you're looking at stuff, showcase your students' versatility. So, what does versatility mean? It means that your student has the ability to adapt to many different types of situations. And one of the things I talk about is, does your student have artistic talent? I find a lot of students that are taking lots of art classes in high school because they had to take one requirement in California, the APG requirement. They take an art class and they really enjoyed it, so I take a lot of art classes, and then have a talent in art. And then they're a computer science major, and when they're applying to the college, nowhere on the application do I see that they've mentioned any of the art classes. They're taking photography classes. Those are stuff they do for fun. Well, guess what? It turns out that that student may have some artistic talent, and so what I tell students all the time is showcase what it is that you have. My oldest daughter has danced since she was 6 years old. Was she going to be a dance major? No. Was she going to participate in dance when she got to college? Yes. And so what we did is that this was before slide room became available, but we submitted an art supplement. And so what we did is we put together, this was in 2009, which is only 7 years ago, but it seems like forever. We put together DVD where she basically showcased, we showcased all her, a couple of recitals she had been a part of, shows at her school, a piece that she choreographed, and then we put together a resume that showed all the things that she had done in while she was at her high school. What does that do? My youngest daughter did the same thing. She took a sculpting class and she did a lot of jewelry design. And so she designed jewelry and entered in all these different contests. What you want to do is if you have a talent like that, you want to give your students the ability to be able to have one more person and give a voice to admissions committee. So by submitting those art supplements, which are now submitted on a Common App through Slide Room, what you're doing is you usually have to submit them about 3 to 4 weeks before the actual application. You're giving the arts department an opportunity to look at your student and to grade them. For example, if your student submits an arts portfolio, even though they may not be an arts major and they're not even planning to major in art, the college is going to send that arts portfolio to their arts department and say, you know, Susie Jones here is submitting an art supplement. Could you give us your take on what you think it's like? And then write back and say, hey, pretty good student. We'd love to have the student take some classes in our art department. This student has talent. So that's one additional check mark that you're going to get on a college application before the admissions committee has even had a chance to look at everything else, your recommendations, your essays, your academic profile. So what you're doing is you're giving yourself one more opportunity for someone else at that college to vote yes on you. And I like to use arts as an example because if you think about it, there are very few public schools that now offer arts. So what happens is if you're showing, but there's lots of colleges that have arts departments and those arts teachers want to keep their jobs, right? So what you want to do is you want to give them a chance to say, yes, we think this is a really good student and we need some more arts students. So they're giving your student a vote of confidence, a yes, before the admissions people are looking at it. And your student may be, I've had instances of students that apply to the arts department or submit an arts portfolio and when the parents thought that a school was a reach for them, it turned out because the arts department, and I got this evidence from a visual arts person at a specific college that said what took that student over the hump was their grades were good, but they weren't stellar. But when the arts department came back and gave that portfolio a rave review, it took that student over the top, and now the school said, okay, this student we think is going to thrive, can probably thrive academically, but we also think that they're going to make a contribution to our arts community, and so they admitted the student. So that's one example of showcasing any talents. The same thing I talked about, if the student's a good writer, if you want the student to, have them talk to a professor who's in the creative writing department, submit a piece of their work to the professor. The other thing is, does your student have some awesome research skills? Some schools have a research project that you can do as a high school student. Some schools have independent study. If you look at a lot of the universities, they all brag about we're a premier research institution. Our students can apply for grants. They can apply for all these wonderful things. And they want to give students, fellowships and scholarships for research. If your student can demonstrate in high school that they have written a paper or done a research project, that's going to give them that additional edge that they would need to differentiate them from other students. If your student a do-gooder, if they've done a lot of community service work, have them showcase that, or have them start a specific club, so that maybe you look at a college and a college says you see that a college has a some type of gardening club or something. If your student can plant a garden in their own backyard and talk about in the college application, it's really just finding a way to make your students stand out in the process without not inventing the student, but finding that student's natural talent and making sure that the college knows that in addition to them being academically qualified, they've got other things they're going to be adding to that college campus that that college may be interested in. The other thing, in terms of, lots of parents say, "Oh, this is great. What am I supposed to? How do I find it?" So, part of the reason to help your students explore and find their passion is sometimes hobbies that students have can turn into passion. I have a nephew who was always loved playing video games. Why he loved playing video games? Because he was diagnosed with juvenile rheumatoid arthritis at a very young age and spent a lot of time as a reward in the children's hospital. They would give him extra time playing video games. He's now a professor at American University and an expert in video game design. So his hobby turned into a passion. And a passion is something you can nurture over time. Sometimes, students are finding stuff that they enjoy doing, whether it's art, whether it's, some kids, have elderly relatives that they're taking care of. I had a young lady who had a grandmother whose vision was faltering, and she decided that most kids would go into a public library and read stories to little kids. What she did was that she took a reading program and brought it into a nursing home. So she read stories to elderly people who had lost the ability to read because their vision was impaired or compromised, and she did a reading program for senior citizens in a nursing home. That was her passion, because she used to read stories to her grandmother, and so she went in and read stories to other elderly people in a local nursing home and started a reading program there. And the other thing that colleges are looking for when you're doing these passions or activities, they want breadth, depth versus breadth. So it doesn't make sense for your students to be the president of every single club for 4 years of high school. They can be, leadership is demonstrated in many different ways. They can be a leader by being a member of a committee of a club and doing a number of activities, and they do that over a 4-year time period. So it's really commitment, a commitment over time, and depth versus breadth. Like I said, when the dean at Stanford says, what else, that's what we're looking for. What else? What makes the student stand out? How do I know that this student is going to contribute to my community here? Sort of in closing, so you guys have some time to answer questions, one of the other things I want to talk about is the best way to start this, if I don't know what the people that are on this webinar, where the kids are in school, but it's better to start early and in high school so you can build your story over time. Look at, I always say the ditch the summer programs on a college campuses. We as parents end up spending a lot of money, and students are spending money doing GoFundMe campaigns to attend a college program on Brown's campus or Stanford's campus. If you're doing those programs, make sure that the people that are teaching those courses are actually professors at those colleges. A lot of times there's these programs that will rent space on a college campus so that as a parent you go, oh, my kid wants to go to Stanford, so they're going to go to a program at Stanford. Stanford's not sponsoring it. If the professors aren't teaching it, that gives you no edge at all in the college application process. They have no idea what the program is. They're just renting space on their campus. And the other things I talk about is if it's going to be a summer program, make sure there's some resulting action as a part of the program. It's great for them to be on campus, spend $6,000 for them to take a no-credit course on campus. They got to interact with a lot of students from different parts of the country, but what did they get out of it, and what can they talk about other than the fact they were on a college campus, a prestigious college campus? So be careful, because a lot of those programs are feeding into our frenzy and stress about, I've got to do everything I can to give my kid an edge to get into this college, so I'm going to have them, I'm going to put together all my savings, I'm going to let them spend $6,000 to go on a college campus for 3 weeks because they want to go to Brown that's on Brown's campus. Be super careful, because that could be throwing money away. And I always tell parents, it's better to do something better than nothing. I know I'm a junkie. I love going to visit colleges, but on family vacations, I always sneak off to a college. You can do the same thing. Your kids, horrified that we have to go to Alabama to visit, grandma who's retired there. Well, let's just take a day trip and let's go visit University of Alabama. Let's go look at some schools, colleges in the vicinity. Your student may not necessarily want to go to that particular college, or for them to see what a big college is like or a small college is like, they can see what kind of environment they're more interested in. And they may not want to go to University of Alabama, but they may decide that they like the sports. They like the where that school is located. So now you've already got a list of factors that are interesting to your kid, so that you can put those together to start building what would be a good match for your students. The other thing you can look at is what kinds of, they can take community college classes over the summer. If you don't have a lot of money and you want your your kid has to take a lot of AP classes, a community college class, which in most high schools you can take it for free, is every bit as good, if not better, than an AP class. AP classes on campus with a high school teacher. Community college classes with a college professor, with a variety of different people in the class, and some of whom are students like them, but some are adults. And so it also shows their ability to interact with different types of people. And so last but not least, I've gone through this really fast, so I'll give you time to answer questions, is, for what I do, how do you know if using someone like me or someone else is worthwhile? I just say research, educate yourself as you would any other product or service. Questions like how many colleges do they visit per year? I see 15 to 20 colleges a year, whether a college flies me out to come on the campus to visit them just so that I can tell them about my students, or whether I just do it on my own. And if your student is interested in going to college out of state, you want to make sure that that person, whoever you're working with, has contacts both regionally and nationally. And then I know I'm guilty of this. I'm a junkie. I will go to any conference, local, national, webinar, free webinar, paid webinar. I just like to stay abreast of everything that's going on in the world of college admissions. So I will attend local and national conferences all the time, and I think that's a way to stay abreast of what's going on. This year in particular, there's lots of stuff going on. The FAFSAs coming out in October. The UCs have changed all their questions. The Common App is opening up, August 1st. I mean, there's lots of different things going on, and unless you're in that world every day, things change quickly. You have to kind of be on top of it. And then, also ask what kind of students people have worked with. I work at a public school, but I also have my own business. So I'm working with students from all walks of life, from a parent that has a first-generation student that has very little money to a parent that has lots of money, and money is not an issue. But also that, I've got students that are very high achieving, to students that are somewhere in the middle, or students that are kind of on the edge. So I have to be well aware of all the different types of colleges, because I'm not just dealing with highly selective colleges. And then the other thing is, like any other service, if someone comes to your house and they're going to replace the pipes, or a plumber, you're going to ask them for references. So I would, and I gladly share this, but people should be willing to share any references they have with any of their clients, and also their colleagues. So if they work at a high school, or they've worked with different college reps, ask them for the names of those people. You can ask them how they enjoy working with that person. So that's kind of the end of my presentation. I want to allow you guys some time to ask some questions. Trevor?
Yeah. Hey, folks. So, if you have any questions, just type your questions. I know we covered a lot of material.
I didn't know I could talk this much, Trevor.
I feel like you were just getting started too.
I was like, what? It's that time already? I didn't realize it went by that quickly. Sorry about that.
Yeah, now you guys know why I pretty much record every conversation I have with Karen, because, each of them can be transcribed and turned into newsletters and all kinds of amazing things. So, all right, so if you guys got any questions, go ahead and chat them. What are some of the questions you could ask Karen Grace Baker? I mean, I guess I'll just probably sum it up for you, what ultimately we're trying to say. And, okay. So Karen, we did get an interesting question. Do you work with students that have learning disabilities, Karen?
Yes, I do, and there are specific colleges and different ways that you have to apply. You apply to colleges for those students. But yes, I do. I do, and I have.
Okay. Cool. So yeah, to make a long story short, hopefully you guys can see my screen. To make a long story short, obviously, trying to find a college that is going to be appropriate fit academically, socially, is going to, be affordable, so that you're not having to take out student loans. Student loans has gone up by $1 trillion in the past 12 years, and that's important too. But, you also don't want to just send your kid to a school that's going to give you the most money. You want to make sure that it's a fit and appropriate in all avenues. And it is risky business, by not going through this process appropriately and really looking at all these factors and taking all this into consideration, what's at stake is that you're either not getting into the types of colleges that you thought you were going to get into. You find out that the colleges that you do get into that you don't want to attend, that your child doesn't want to attend, or it's so expensive that you end up not finishing from those colleges. All that's important to take into consideration when you're trying to find the right fit college for your child. Hey, Karen, what do you mean by like the anecdote to describe your child?
Basically what I mean is to think about what it was, as you're trying to figure out what the right type of college and who your student is, you want to figure out, is there some type of story that you could think about when they were younger that they always did. An example, I had a parent that said to me that this child was they call this child stubborn. And I just said, I won't say the child is stubborn. This stubborn was not the right way to describe the child. The story she gave was that she took the student for swimming lessons. The student was supposed to have 5 lessons. Every time the student went, the swimming instructor kept saying, "I need you to get in the water." The student wouldn't get in the water. They didn't want to go anywhere. I go, fine. It was the last day, and the mother said, "You know what? I'm done. We're done with swimming lessons." At that point in time, the student got on the diving board, jumped in, and swam across the pool. What it showed is that student already knew what she wanted to do, or she just needed to be pushed all the way to the edge before she was going to do what she was going to do. But it's just like little stories like that. The one I talked about, my daughter was always the type that would, if we're walking down the street, she would just tell me, "Mommy, give money to that person." She's a very compassionate person. So just think about what it is that's unique and special, and there's probably some story that you can tell of an incident that happened that was a defining moment where you said, "My kid is going to be is compassionate. They're going to be a doctor, or they did something like, my husband's a physician, and his mother, she's passed away since, but she talks about how when he was very young that he self-diagnosed that he had scarlet fever or something crazy like that. And the way he did it is because they had some medical dictionary at home. They looked up all the symptoms and said, "This is what I have." And his mother said, "You're nuts. That's not what you have." And they went to the doctor, and he was right. So in their minds, he was going to be. He also ended up being a doctor, but was that a defining moment? No. But it showed that he probably had the wherewithal to do the research to figure out what it was that was wrong when everyone else was trying to, sort of be were baffled and didn't know what was going on, and he sort of nailed it on the head. So
yeah, see, these are the things that, like Karen said, if it is a good match, the college is going to notice that too. That's how you're able to stand out and be picked over all the kids that have perfect grades and test scores. It's this anecdote, this little way that sums up your child, and that stuff is really important when we're talking about trying to cut through all of the different applications. So last time we talked about, I brought in Ethan Sawyer, the college essay guy. And, a lot of that was just trying to figure out what uniquely we can talk about in your essays to make you stand out in these applications. And, but making sure that you're sending those essays to the appropriate list of colleges is what determines whether you're going to get into those colleges. Do those colleges want someone like that, right? So, I thought it'd be really easy. I just thought that, Karen, if you can chat in the chat box, the email address that we can use to get in contact with you or, set up a chat with you. I'm going to, give you guys a chance to chat with Karen. You can chat with her for about 15 minutes just to get a feel for, what's going on with your child. You can send her an email to try to schedule that with her appointment setter. And, just send her an email. You'll get a chance to chat, She'll give you some ideas. You'll get an idea of whether this is appropriate for you. And, based on your work together, you can find a college that's going to be an appropriate fit for your child. And I love working with Karen. Karen is, fantastic. The results speak for themselves. And, what I can do, as you guys are going through that, picking the right colleges, is I can find out, how much money each of these colleges are going to cost and how to maximize the scholarship and grant money that you're going to get to attend these colleges. So anyway, Karen, I really, really, really appreciate your time and sharing so much with my audience. And let me send out the email that we need. So that's going to be sent out to right here. Just make sure everybody got that.
This is This is my 15. This is for my 15-minute. This is for the 15-minute offer we talked about, Trevor.
Yeah. So you're gonna get a chance to talk with Karen for 15 minutes. Send her an email. Make sure that you got the email that that I sent out, and that will allow you the chance to get on her calendar, talk about your child individually. You know, as a parent, you probably know things about your child that you think would be great ammunition that Karen can use in order to help them get into colleges. And that's the point, you know. That's the objective here. So, yeah, anyway, that's basically the bottom line. I think that's a great opportunity for you, and I hope you learned a lot on this webinar, or webcast as I start to call them now. Also, yeah, you want to let her know that you attended this webcast. So that way she can, you know, discern where that person came from. But Karen, I really appreciate your time being so generous with your information to my audience, and look forward to working with you this year and helping a lot of people getting into a bunch of colleges and getting money.
Yeah, so we're probably, I'll do those appointments will probably be scheduled. It's probably going to be a couple weeks before they're scheduled because I'm pretty busy right now. So it'll probably be probably somewhere around the 8th or 9th of July. So do not have appointments available.
Yeah, 8th and 9th, that makes sense. But yeah, just get on her calendar as soon as possible, guys. At the end of this webcast, just go ahead and send out an email. Tell her, you know, that you were on this webcast and that you're taking her up on that offer. Okay? All right, you guys. I appreciate all of your attention and your time. I hope this was a good webcast for you. I'm starting to call them webcasts because I don't want people to think it's just any typical webinar, right? Because this is really giving away a lot of information, so we call it webcast. And you know, I want you guys to have the good rest of the weekend, and I will talk to you all very soon. Take care.
Thanks, Trevor.